In a world where everyone knows everything. Yeah, right. One dad stands below everyone and yells, "I know nothing."
Please welcome.
This is the Dad Who Knows Nothing podcast.
All right, everyone. This is the Dad Who Knows Nothing podcast. We're very excited today to have Michael Harris with us. Now, Michael Harris is a best-selling author. He's author of the book Falling Down, Getting Up. He's also the co-founder of Endless Stages. He's been an entrepreneur his entire life from a very young age. And one of his main goals now in life is to help others get their message out through various ways to help them, other entrepreneurs, get out their message about the services and things that they offer. So very excited to have you with us, Michael. Thanks for giving us a little bit of your time.
It's great to be here, Dana, and thank you for asking me to be on your show. And I really look forward to diving into our discussion and conversation today.
Nice, thanks. So, interesting question. Obviously, I talk about where people started their journey, how they got to where they are today, because we know that there's a lot of ups and downs and different challenges that people face. So there's something about blackberries in your story. So maybe you could just start and tell us how you came in this journey.
Yeah. My dad was very influential in my life. And he was an entrepreneur. He owned multiple businesses growing up. And one of the things that he always said was that find something that somebody wants to buy and sell it to them. So I took that to heart. In growing up, I grew up outside of Portland, kind of out in the country outside of Portland. And we had a lot of blackberries. And my mom was the best blackberry pie baker in the neighborhood. So whenever she made pies, all the neighbor kids, all my friends would come over, and want to have Mrs. Harris's pies because they were the best. So I was 6 years old, and some of the other kids in the neighborhood started, throwing newspapers and doing a couple of different things to try to earn a little bit of money, mowing lawns, whatever. And I thought, well, maybe people will buy the blackberry pies. So I made a deal with my mom. I went and picked the pies. Mom baked them, and then I went around the neighborhood and sold them for $1. Mom got 50 cents. I got 50 cents. I'm convinced too that the Girl Scouts stole their sales line from me, right? Because you go, and most Girl Scouts, they'll say, how many boxes do you want? Versus, do you want to buy a box of cookies? So I'd go around the neighborhood and say, how many pies do you want? Because I assumed they were going to buy my mom, Mrs. Harris's pies. So was that, I didn't doubt that. So I would sell 2, 3, 4 pies sometimes.
Very cool. I like her already. I'm a big pie fan, so I'm sure those were amazing.
Yes.
So then, how did that lead into the entrepreneurial life that you've led?
Well, later on, 11 years old, I think, was the first time we did it. We would go to the local lawn and garden. It was Scotty's Lawn and Garden. And they would take in lawnmowers when somebody would buy a new one. And then we'd go over, we'd buy them for $1. And we'd push the lawnmowers back home, a couple of blocks back home, and we'd clean them up. We'd put a new spark plug in it. They were the old Briggs and Stratton engines, so they're easy to work on. We'd clean them up. We'd give them a 30-day guarantee. We would put it in the nickel ads and sell them for $20. Never had one come back, right?
Wow.
So I always had this, entrepreneurial feel in my life. It's not that I didn't have any jobs, but the last job I had was 1994, a real job, right? And since then, it's just been me. And I think that that's been inbred in me by my parents, by my mom, by my dad, just the influence, my brothers, which are all entrepreneurs as well. It's just there, right?
Yeah, I mean, it seems like it's definitely there can be people that are predisposed to that entrepreneurial mindset. So it sounds like
Right.
you have a whole family of that. So that's cool. So was
Yeah.
it all smooth sailing? I mean, any challenges, or was it
Oh,
easy from the get-go?
uh, I'm not sure it's ever smooth sailing, Dana. I think
Right.
there's always ups and downs, and there's mountains that get in the way and rocks thrown at you, and just plain falling, just the way life is. And when I was 12 years old, I had a water skiing accident, and I ended up having 60% of my liver removed, gallbladder, 21 blood transfusions, collapsed lung, near-death experience, died and came back, which really, my parents, of course, my mom was just beside herself, couldn't believe her 12-year-old, I was a hotshot water skier, her 12-year-old hotshot water skier almost died, right? So they were really thankful that I was able to recover. It was about a year and a half that it took to recover. And this is something that, I've struggled with. Both my parents passed quite a while ago now. One of the things that I wanted more from both my mom and my dad was to be able to talk to them at the time more about the emotional aspect of what was going on with me. I mean, they were just thankful again that I was alive, right? But I had a lot of emotions going on. I had a lot of fear going on. My self-esteem plummeted. I didn't go to seventh grade. I didn't start school until January. The accident was in the summer because of part of my healing. And when I went back to school, I had a tube in my side that was a drain tube for everything that was going on. And so I really struggled for a long time with that. And, I dived a little bit into some alcohol and pot, and got around some of the wrong people. And I'm going to say this story a little bit fast, but at 27 years old, I had more surgery, but this time they almost cut my legs off. My right leg was 100% blocked. My left leg was 65% blocked from vascular disease. And they did this surgery, which is called a fempop, which essentially is bypass surgery, except on the legs. I was walking on a cane. They wanted to do it again about 7 months later. And I told them no. And they said, if you don't have this additional surgery, you're going to have your legs cut off in a couple of months and likely be dead within 6 months. And I left the hospital AMA, against medical advice. I didn't want to have additional surgery. They couldn't tell me what was going on. And again, I was still pretty much an emotional wreck. I didn't, how could I be this, sick and mortal man in the 20s, and being told that I might die, for the second time in my life. So I struggled a lot. My dad had actually passed a year earlier than that. So he had passed away. My mom was still alive. And I ended up, again, I'm kind of making a long story compressed a little bit, ended up at a place called the Pritikin Longevity Center down in Santa Monica, California. It was on the boardwalk in Santa Monica. And I could barely walk. And this was a huge lesson in my life, Dana. And, the listeners, I hope they really hear this. The doctor told me that when it hurt to get up and walk is to keep walking. And he says, go out on the boardwalk, walk as long and as hard as you can till you just can't stand it anymore. Then you can stop for a few minutes, but then get up and keep going. So what was happening in my body was that my legs weren't getting enough blood. It was sending signals to my brain that the legs weren't getting enough blood. So my brain sent signals back down to build new collateral blood vessels. So literally within 2 weeks, I went from walking about 10 feet on a cane to walking 2 miles. So
Wow.
I had to really learn how to walk through the pain. And, that was a huge lesson in so many different ways that I had that, yes, there's there is pain in life. There are struggles in life. My struggle may have been a little bit deeper than some people's at that age and less than some people at that age, right? Because a lot of people go through physical challenges in life, and it's just the way it is. And then I started doing a little bit of yoga, and I'm coming back to the entrepreneur side a little bit. I'd never done yoga before, never cared about it, but started doing some yoga. And I ended up wanting to do more and more and more yoga, nothing but yoga, because it made me feel so good. My self-esteem started getting better. I started, acknowledging a lot of those aspects of myself that were more on the positive side, that the good side, those things that I liked about myself. And I ended up being a teacher. I ended up with a couple of yoga studios that I owned. I partnered in other studios. I coached other studios in the business part of their studios all over the world. I've trained thousands of yoga teachers, probably 6,000 or 7,000 yoga teachers, somewhere in that neighborhood. Today, I don't own any studios. Today, I teach about 8 or 10 classes a month, but primarily what I do today is to help people get their message out. And you asked about the ups and downs. Yeah, there was that physical ups and downs type stuff, but certainly there have been times, even in the mid 90s, I'd made a bunch of money. I was wearing suit and tie, but I didn't want to do that anymore. I wanted to stop doing that. So I stopped working for a couple of years. And that's where I dived into the yoga. And then with the yoga, when like COVID came along a couple of years ago, that killed a lot of fitness businesses,
Right.
Whether it was Gold's 24 hours or lots of yoga studios are coming back now. But financially, that was a huge hit.
Yeah. So yeah, definitely some ups and downs, certainly in the most recent one. And then obviously, the physical side. You talk about stories and everyone's stories. Has this desire to give people almost like a free space to tell their story, to share it with others, to help them to share it. Do you feel like that helps people deal with the emotional side if they're able to tell their story and can tell that if in a positive setting for people?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I know for myself, even writing my story for my book was a huge release in, I don't really want to call it therapy in the traditional sense of therapy, but it was therapeutic in the writing and releasing that and other people reading it. I had to be really comfortable with some of the things that I wrote. And, I look back on some of what I did and realize, they say that we have issues in our tissues, and like our back hurts, our head hurts, whatever it might be, right? 90% of the people that go to hospital because of stress. So by letting out whatever it is that's holding us back, we begin to heal not only emotionally, but also physically. Some of those the physical issues begin to go away too. And this is science now. This isn't just woo-woo. They're actually finding it's science that the more that we deal with these things, even, a lot of people have cancer and other ailments where they find that if they take time to pray and meditate and to sit quietly, they tend to heal differently than those that don't. So I have a huge passion, not only for that, but also, Dana, there's so many places in the world where people are not allowed to speak out at all. And I believe for me that it's really important to speak out in whatever it is that I want to speak out with, and to help other people too. Historically, we have sat around fires, for thousands of years telling stories.
Right.
And traditions are passed orally. The biggest traditions in the world are oral traditions. And by sharing that and by helping other people share their experience, we continue that process.
So why else do you think everyone's story is so important?
It's a good question. Why else? Because I hit on some of the big ones. I just think when we are not only just telling our story, but being able to share whatever message it is, it may not be our story. It may be an entrepreneurial message. It might be a product message. It might be a service message. But I believe that the more that we can be of help to other people, the better. And I want to go back your previous guest, Brendan. He talked about being a presenter and growing up in school and all of that. And one of the things that I recognize, and I loved everything that he said, and he has, I think he called it the easy 3 question or the easy 3 exercise, something like that, where he talked about the random word and the question and the video messages. One of the things that I recognized a number of years ago is we really learned how to speak publicly in probably 1st or 2nd grade, maybe some people even in kindergarten and nursery school. We would go and the teacher would say, what do you want to talk about today? And we'd go up and we would do show and tell. I just got this in front of me, these glasses. Tell us about your glasses. So
Right.
You would get up there for a couple of minutes and tell the people in the room, your friends, your peers, this little story. So we learned how to tell stories when we were little kids. But then as we grow up, sometimes, people say, oh, that was stupid. You shouldn't share that. You shouldn't talk about that. So we get suppressed, but we already know how to do it. So part of what we do in helping other people is helping them recognize that they already know how to do it. They already have the tools, and it's just beginning to use those again.
Yeah. So you talked about speaking in front of, because most of the time people are going to tell their stories in front of an audience in some form or fashion.
Right.
And there is this natural resistance. I think I mentioned to Brendan, that Seinfeld quote about, people would rather be in the casket than giving the eulogy, with that fear of public speaking.
Yeah.
So how do you work with your clients to help overcome that resistance, that fear of, what's the reaction going to be, right? They're not there. What I've found with people is it's not so much that their story isn't relevant and it's not good. It's just they're worried about what the 10% of people may say, the negative that may come in. And it's been said, I think Ed Milet may have said that it's not about feedback. It's about the feedback we listen to.
Right.
Because, right, we're going to get feedback no matter what.
Yeah.
But it's the ones that almost tend to fulfill what we've already kind of thought. And then we hear that negative that is what we thought was going to happen. And it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. So how do you work with your clients to get them past that resistance?
Well, one is what we already talked about, and recognizing that they already have the skills to do it. Because a lot of people don't think that they have the skills to be able to get up and speak, but they've already learned it. So it's exercising those skills. One of the things that we do is my partner and I, he grew up in the entertainment industry and was a child actor and was in like Freddy versus Jason and some of those old slasher movies. And he still does some various parts and does some stage and commercial work. But one of the things that we're using is a framework that was developed. It's really a 5-step process, and we probably don't have time to get into it all, but we'll break somebody's life up into 5 different sections. We'll pull out something that stands out to them, say so let me ask you just randomly, between 10 and 20 years old, what stands out for you as a story in your life?
That's a good question. Probably just playing sports. I never played for my school, but just enjoyed playing sports and trying to play as much as I could during those years.
Little league baseball kind of thing.
Yeah, never really played any organized sports. It was really
Okay.
just with friends and just
Just
trying
around.
just trying to pick up all the different sports and trying them out and
Yeah.
playing them as much as I could.
Well, I suspect that you have a story in there from doing that, and a story that you could tell on stage, on a podcast, to your daughters, your kids, to other kids, and make a point about it. Like my friend Les Brown says, never tell a story without a point, and never tell a point without a story. So out of those experiences you had, playing sports in the neighborhood with your friends, kicking around, whatever you were doing, you can create something that would probably become viral if you did it right, if you did it well. Maybe even if you didn't do it well, but you were able to express the emotion, the feeling, and that would invoke something in the listener, right? So we go through this process because a lot of people also don't recognize that they have stories to tell, and I struck out, I don't know exactly how old I was. I'll say 7 or 8 years old. I struck out a T-ball as a kid, and I can go through this whole story about the T-ball, or I can talk about picking blackberries and making blackberry pies as a kid and have different stories out of that and different points out of that. So we help people take those stories that are already present in their life and create something that a listener might want to hear, or that might be useful to them, or that they might connect with.
Yeah, and those are the things that people, to your point, an audience connects with more. You can stand up there and give facts and figures and talk about all of these things, but it's the personal stories, to your point, that connect people, and it really makes it powerful for them.
Well, what we remember is how we feel.
Right.
Yet very rarely have I been to a talk where there's facts and figures and remembered the facts and figures much. But I remember how I felt as a result of hearing that speaker.
Yeah.
Even like what you do as a podcaster, you're bringing all these different messages out, these different experiences with different people that are telling their different stories, that your listeners, some of the listeners are going to be really tied to one person, and then maybe not so much another person, and then another. I mean, it just kind of evolves.
Yeah, no, that's a great point.
Yeah.
So you talked about yoga and how you've run studios, you've done classes, you've taught it, you've gone all around the world doing this. What is practicing and teaching yoga? What has that taught you from a business standpoint?
That's a great question. My book, Falling Down, Getting Up, was forwarded by J. Conrad Levinson. And for those that know him, he was the father of guerrilla marketing. And I was able to get to him through my publisher and ended up meeting him. And he read the book, the manuscript twice in the same day when he got it. And he called me up and he said, I love what you wrote. He says, as a guerrilla marketer, he says, this sounds like guerrilla marketing to me, the experience that you went through. And, we became friends, and he did pass away, but before he passed away, one of the things that he invited me and encouraged me to do, which I haven't done yet, but it could happen soon, he encouraged me to take my experience as a yoga entrepreneur and write a guerrilla marketing book based on the systems of yoga and how those systems of yoga can be applied in business. So for instance, one of the things I recognized, I opened up my first studio in 99, and it was about 2000, 2001, and studio was doing okay, but it wasn't like doing gangbusters. And I took a look at the yoga and I thought, well, isn't this interesting? Here are, systems and subsystems, and everybody says it's great to run a business by systems, and if you don't, it's just haphazard, right? So the first thing that I thought about was the breathing. The inhale and the exhale was, the revenue and the expenses. There needs to be that flow. You're just not taking it all in.
Right.
I mean, you got to spend money on something, right? The payroll, the rent, whatever it is. And hopefully you have more coming in than going out, right? Because it comes in, the oxygen of that breath is used to invigorate the blood and our whole system. So that revenue coming in was used to invigorate the whole business and put it on fire. And once I recognized that and started applying those systems, within about a month, my business increased over 20%, just right off the bat, like that. And we went around and we wrote systems for the business where all the way down to the first person in the morning puts the key in the door, locks the door, opens the door, locks the door behind him, turns on the light switch. And we went through this whole system, just like the yoga and the process that we do in the yoga, the systems and subsystems, and started applying it to our business. And then it grew more and more and more. So I had a couple of really successful studios. People started coming to me, other studio owners said, how are you doing this? And I started showing them how to do that. And then I set up something called Yoga Business Expert, which was really bringing that business side to yoga studios. Just like any business needs to have those systems, for it to function. One of the things that some of the owners didn't recognize, and I got a number of comments about this, they said, thank you for giving me permission to make money. Because they thought, well, it's yoga, let's like not make money. Let's just, yada, yada, yada. It's not right, whatever. No, it's just like the more money you make, the more people you're helping. So don't be afraid to charge, and don't be afraid to charge well, because what you're teaching is valuable.
Yeah, it's like so many times with the whole sales cycle, everybody does all this work in their messaging and showing the value of the service or the product that they're offering, and then they hesitate to actually ask for the sale. They hesitate to actually, it's almost like they're embarrassed to say, well, this is how much it costs.
Right.
But you've spent all this time building up this value. And in the yoga business, you've shown your clients by word of mouth or the ones that you have that you're giving them all this value. You're giving them such an amazing talent that they can draw upon. And then it's like, I feel bad about asking for money for it. So yeah, that's a great point.
Well, I mean, one of the ways, at least within the yoga business, that we overcame that was almost more of an invitation. It's like, because I knew that if somebody came 3 times a week or more, that they were going to get benefit. Didn't matter whether they liked it or not, or had money or not. But if they came 3 times or more a week, they would be feeling better. I mean, there's no way around it. It'd be like going to the gym 3 times a week. You're going to feel better. Doesn't matter. If you go for a walk 3 times a week, you're going to feel better. So by coming 3 times a week, they're already setting a pattern in their life to do something healthy for them, get into their wellness and all that. And by doing that, they would experience it themselves, that feeling, after like the first 30 days, after the first month, and naturally want to continue. So the invitation would be, well, Dana, you're doing so well right now. Why don't you continue and either buy a yearly and commit for the whole year, or start doing the monthly auto pay? And they would do it.
Yeah. Do you think that coming out of the pandemic, do you think there's these yoga practices, these wellness, I think that they're going to start to explode, because I think you're going to see more and more people investing more and more money in their own wellness. The world and things are so crazy and so divided, and there's so much stress now that it seems like so many more people are starting to focus within, trying to make sure that they are in the best condition to be able to withstand all the daily stresses that they have to deal with.
Yeah. And I agree. And I know where I'm the studio where I live in Bend, Oregon, and I had sold it to one of my teachers, and then she sold it. It shut down for a little bit during COVID for not quite a year. and then we're hybrid right now, so it's virtual, online, as well as in the studio. We did follow the mask mandate when it was in place in our state. It's not in place anymore, but there are still some people that are wearing masks. But, again, coming back to, if we're moving our body, we're going to be feeling better. Whether it's a 20-minute walk, whether it's going to the gym and lifting, whether it's playing golf, whether it's doing yoga, and all these stressors in the world that are happening, and all these different challenges that are going on, regardless of where you are in the spectrum of thought, the more that we can center, I think, the better. Right?
Yeah, and I absolutely think that whether it's meditation or it's yoga or those types of things that allow you to quiet your mind and be able to reflect and think and slow down, I think that in itself, more people that are doing that and building awareness for those things is inevitably going to help people be better with everyone else.
Yeah,
it seems like everybody's going so fast, a mile a minute. They react so quickly to things that's causing a lot of the conflict, I think, because people are not taking the time to think about, well, hey, this is someone's opinion. They're entitled to that. I can disagree with them, but it doesn't mean that I have to, have any ill feelings toward them. And I think sometimes we just get into this mode that we react and our opinion is already made, and now it's us against them, as opposed to staying centered, staying relaxed, staying calm, and just understanding that some of these things are not worth getting riled up about. And I think yoga is a fantastic practice to be able to help people with that, along with meditation and those other things.
Yeah. And one of the simplest things when I'm asked, I say, go out and take a 20-minute walk. When you walk for 20 minutes, you've walked about a mile. It's about 2,000 steps. You've changed the chemistry in your body. It's hard not to relax after walking for 20 minutes. You can walk more, but just like 20 minutes, every morning or every evening helps keep that calmness in place, that relaxation. If we get stressed out and we do that, then we're going to be better people. I was asked once what superpower I'd want to be. And, I had to think about it, Dana. You think about like Superman or Batman or, and it's always like good versus evil. There's always that line in there. And, hearing what you said about yoga meditation is just like, what it came to me the last time I was asked that question is, I want more internal peace more of the time. So if I were to have a superpower, that would be it.
Yeah, because there's been so many facts that have been discovered from a medical standpoint that the people that are constantly on edge, it wrecks your body in so many different ways. And so that would be a great superpower, to always be perfect at doing that and staying peaceful inside, for sure. Yeah. So, you've talked a lot about, your experience, your story about, walking the 10 feet and then being able to walk 2 miles in 2 weeks. That's a nature thing, right? Your body was working to try and get you back to where you needed to be. Yeah. To me, if I experienced that, I would call that a quantum leap, right? So what does nature teach us? Does nature teach us to make those kind of leaps, to think that those things are possible?
Well, I think it does. I thought about this years ago. I was standing out, it was fall. I was up in the mountains, and there was a lake up here that was basically turned into mud because they had drained some of the water out of it, and it was all dried up, and there were still some wet spots. But I could be standing there, and within an hour, there could be a foot of snow on the ground, if storms come in. And storms come in like that all the time where I live. And so here I am standing there, sunny day, it's maybe 38, 40 degrees, something like that, not real warm. And in any moment, you get a snowflake, you get another snowflake, another one. And the temperature can drop. I've been up there in where I live, it's dropped 20 degrees in 10 minutes. A storm just moves that fast, into the area. Is that a quantum leap? I think it is. I think it's a way of nature showing. All of a sudden a thunderstorm comes along. For a lot of our friends that experience tornadoes and stuff, a tornado can come in. Most of those, are damaging. But then you take like what's called the northern white owl in Africa. There's in the north part of Africa, it's northern, and the part is called the southern white owl. It's called a transformer owl. And it can sit up there in the tree, normal size, and then it can shrink itself down instantly, or it can blow itself up to make it look bigger, scare off prey, hide in the branches, whatever it's trying to do. Lizards can often change colors. Octopuses can do things. There's all sorts of examples in nature of where a quantum leap happens, where a change happens instantly. Instantly, something changes. So if nature's showing us how to do that, why can't we do that too? If we're part of nature, if there's somebody, and I'm going to take an example. When you asked your wife to marry you, there was probably, I don't know exactly your situation, but I'm speculating here. There was probably your wife today probably was like maybe blushed and flushed and had this energetic thing that going on and said, yes, I'll marry you. All those things to me are a quantum leap, internally energetic. Just a person blushing, instantly they blush, they have no control over it. So is that a quantum leap? That's a change of state, which a quantum leap is? So if we change our mind about something, if something, say, isn't working well in our life, and we change our mind about something, will the outcome and the results change? Yes. And I'll give a brief example. Back when I was all sick and not well and all that, I ended up in the hospital, and a friend of mine came to me and he said, are you ready? And I said, yes, I'm ready. And at that moment, I knew my life was going to change. I no longer was going to be sick. I was no longer going to feel all these feelings. And he showed me how to do that. And when I made that decision that said, yes, I am ready, it was almost like I had a swooshing experience. And I think all of us at some point have had something similar to that, whether it's asking somebody to get married, whether it's a health condition, maybe it's a job, maybe you get a job offer and like instantly you go, yeah, it's just like really exciting. So why not engineer that? And I think we can. And I think we do it all the time. We don't always recognize it. If I can mention one more thing, there's this whole thing about the law of attraction. And if we, think hard enough, we're going to attract whatever it is. So one of the examples I use in like talking about quantum leap at a deeper level, we've all thought about, okay, what are we going to have for dinner? Okay, I want to go have some chicken and rice, and I'm going to throw some tomatoes in there and asparagus and all that. We have this picture of this dinner that we want to eat and the feeling that it produces. We can almost, our saliva can almost start generating, that taste of that chicken and that rice or whatever it might be. So what do? We go to the store, we get the chicken, we get the rice, we get the tomatoes, asparagus, whatever ingredients it is, come back home, put it all together. We have now manifested our dinner. So that the idea of law of attraction, which is so mystical, quote unquote, for a lot of people, I think we're doing that all the time too. It's just like everything we need to know, we already are doing it.
Yeah. And it really gets to which you touched on, the mindset, whereas some of these animals and some of these things in nature may happen automatically. It may be instinctual for that owl to expand in size or to shrink. depending on the situation, our mindset is such a powerful influence over us as humans that we have the ability. And unfortunately, it also has the negative side, right? Because we can dwell on it from a mindset perspective on the negative side. And then that's what we're always attracting, right? Negative things and things. But you're a great example of somebody who, changed their mind and said, I'm going to set my mind to doing this other thing, and I'm not going to do these things. And then your life changed and it altered its course because you were starting to attract those things that you were seeing in your mind.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
No, that was great. Well, Mike, I really appreciate you giving me a few minutes of your time this evening. I know you just enjoyed a nice weekend in the woods and were disconnected. So I appreciate you connecting with me here on Zoom to be able to do this podcast. This was a great conversation. So everybody, his book is Falling Down, Getting Up. So my listeners, I'll put that in the show notes. So we'll have a link. It's available out there on Amazon, I'm sure, in a lot of different areas. And if somebody wanted to learn more about you and your story, is it just michaelbharris.com? Is that the best place for them to go?
That's the best place to start.
Okay.
And if I can just throw something out, if somebody wants to learn more about getting their message out and getting their voice out and understanding how to do it, on my website, there's a place to opt into what's called Endless Stages. And there's a lot of free resources there, a free membership site with a lot of different videos that you can access. Talks everything about overcoming nervousness to creating your story. We've been building this really strong group of entrepreneurs that are interested in getting their message out. And even if people that aren't an entrepreneur that just want to get their message out, is they can go in and utilize that free information.
All right. That sounds cool. I was looking at the website a little bit earlier today. Seems like there's a lot of great stuff on there. So appreciate that. Again, we'll put that website out there so that all of our listeners, if they want to learn more, they'll know where to go to learn more about you and your story and all the ways that you help your clients. So appreciate it so much. I feel like we could have talked for another hour or so about different things. I appreciate the time, Michael, and thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Dan. It was wonderful being here.
Thank you for joining us on our journey to learn about various topics. If you'd like to get in touch with the Dad Who Knows Nothing, connect with him at the Dad Who Knows Nothing on TikTok and Instagram, or Dad Knows Zero on Twitter. If you have a moment and you like this episode, drop us a review wherever you listen to your podcasts. Have a great day and enjoy your journey through this game called life.